So I guess I'm ready to call the meeting to order. Is the sound on, I guess, is everything? All right. So welcome to the August 24th Planning Board meeting. The first item will be to approve the minutes of August 10th. We have no A&Rs this evening. And so the first item will be to discuss the proposed zoning amendments to the solar bylaw and possible vote to serve as the petitioner for the amendments to 302.2, 305.6, and a new article regarding solar energy facilities. Following that, we'll have the town plan update, then old and new business, and then adjournment. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of the August 10th meeting?
Yes.
Any questions, comments, discussions?
No.
Okay. Motion to adjourn? I mean to...
I won't raise my hand that quick, but,
yeah.
well, yes.
Make that motion.
Second the motion.
I have to abstain.
Okay, so 2 abstentions and 3 in favor.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. And we have Ron Barron from CMRPC with us tonight. Ron, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Ron Barron, Director of Land Use and Planning at the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission.
Okay.
It's a habit I got into my old job, so I don't know if it's required or not.
All right, Aidan, do you want to move into then our discussion on the zoning bylaws?
Of course. In front of you tonight, you'll have the first 2 documents we'll discuss First of all, this is a continuation of our meeting on August 10th, in which we discussed proposed amendments to the solar bylaw as outlined on the agenda. The memo details basically the internal staff work that has been done since that date, along with detailing the various materials that were provided for your review ahead of this meeting. Continuing through, and just a brief overview of this memo, continuing through that memo, I've highlighted 2 key decisions that I recommend the planning board make this evening. The first is the planning board should provide guidance on 7 key considerations I've highlighted, and based upon the guidance provided, I would recommend the board, regardless of that guidance provided, that that you vote to serve as petitioner to the select board on these amendments, so that way we can begin the public hearing process, which is also detailed in this memo. So if that vote is made this evening, that allows us to send this to the select board for their September 8th meeting, and then begin the process articulated, and this is very time sensitive. Then the rest of the memo essentially provides very brief notes on the 7 considerations, and I will plan on discussing these with you in more depth this evening. And along with this document is also the proposed amendments themselves, which have been altered significantly since the August 10th meeting, and the considerations are also detailed there in the comments next to the track changes, and I think after Ron's presentation we will go through these one by one and I'll solicit your feedback. And the only other thing I will say is this memo was revised today based on discussion with town council and various staff members, and I will go over those revisions and what they entail for you after Ron's presentation. So someone who's been very involved in this process is Ron Barron of CMRPC. We did provide to you his brief memo just detailing his involvement and his presentation that he has graciously prepared for this evening. So I will turn it over to Ron, and after Ron is finished, feel free to ask him any questions, and then I will take it from there, and we'll go line by line in the track changes for the amendments.
Very good. Hey, Ron?
Yes, give me 1 second. Apologize. I'm new to this platform, so I just have to find there it is. Sorry, let me go back to the beginning. So I'm happy to walk through the presentation that we had put together for our office hours that we did recently, kind of give you an outline of what the new law is requiring and has been requiring since what the timeline of that has been. Also, you can see my presentation, I hope.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good. And we can talk a little bit about the work that we've done here and with other communities, and sort of give a framework for why these changes are being considered today. So, as I'm sure you're all aware, with the 2024 Climate Act, the Climate Act was a bill that reformed the state's siting and permitting processes for solar, in particular clean energy infrastructure in general. The main effects, there were 3 main effects that came out of this. One was is that it split the jurisdiction for the types of solar projects that are approved between large and small solar facilities. Now, large and small are in quotes here because they are the state's definitions, and they're not necessarily related to how our communities have thought of large and small solar. For the state's purposes, a large field is anything over 25 megawatts of rated nameplate capacity, and small is anything below that. So everything that's a large, considered a large site, would be under the jurisdiction of the Energy Facility Siting Board now, the EFSB. Anything that's considered small, that is under 25 megawatts, is still under town or municipal jurisdiction. The second thing we did is it created a new optional consolidated permitting pathway, which is one of the things that you're going to be asked to take up today. What this did was created a option for it doesn't necessarily change the number of approvals that a person has to get at the local level. What it does is it consolidates all of the reviews into a single permitting application, and it adds a 12-month timeline for approval by the municipality. And again, this is an optional step. This is something that a developer can choose whether or not they want to do. But we anticipate a good number of applicants are probably going to go this route. And then the third thing it did is it created a new appeals process for all solar permits. Essentially, what happens now is if you do a consolidated permit, you do and they go to appeal, it goes directly to the EFSB. It doesn't necessarily go through the traditional approval routes that we're used to. And the important step is they changed the appeals process to what they're calling de novo adjudication. And essentially what that means is when someone submits an appeal, the EFSB looks at it as though it's a brand new application that's being submitted to them for the first time. They will take into consideration some of what the town has asked for, some of the reasons why the town has denied it, but they're going to look at it with fresh eyes, which is going to end up creating potential vulnerabilities if communities don't have their solar amendments updated. Talking a little bit more about the expedited permitting and local zoning, what this section of the law has done is it has created this, as I said, it created this path that communities are required to offer starting October 1st. Currently, it's optional, but as far as I know, no community has opted to take them, but it will be mandatory as of October 1st. Kind of walked through what that already was already. It's important to know that all proposals, in addition to all of the requirements that are in the state law and in the state regulations, the applicant still has to apply with all local zoning and permit regulations that currently exist. So technically speaking, a community can choose not to update their zoning bylaw. There's no requirement that they update their zoning bylaw. However, as I said, many communities' current zoning may not be compliant with recent rulings with the Chapter 40A, Section 3. That's the Dover Amendment that regulates what communities can and cannot for certain protected classes of uses. And also certain communities may not have battery storage protection. And that's something that the court has decided is protected under Chapter 48, Section 3, as well as regular solar. So these are important areas for communities to consider. Now, in preparing to accept the consolidated permits, as I said, they're going to be mandatory starting October 1st. There's a few things that communities need to do. The first thing is going to be, really the thing you have to do, or you really should do, is make sure that you're designating your local government representative. This is a role that is largely administrative. It's essentially the person who will be notified when a new consolidated permit has come in. They are the person that is going to make sure that all the procedural steps are filled out, that the application is complete. They will be the individual that is sending out the review packets to all the various boards that require approval. So if you require planning board approval, you require Concom approval, they're the one that will coordinate that. If there are any mitigation measures that are tied to the site suitability criteria that the state has put up, they will address those as well. And then any issues, then they would issue the consolidated decision in the state portal. Essentially, they'll take all of the responses from the various boards, put those into the state's application, and then they will manage all the documentation and the statutory deadlines and approve or deny the application based on the responses. By default, that position is the chief administrative officer or their delegate. But the zoning may also designate another body. It could be the planning board, it could be the planning board chair, it could be the ZBA chair, whoever you think is the most appropriate. It can be designated in zoning if you so choose. We've also been told that the chief administrative officer, typically in communities, this is either going to be your town administrator or the chair of the select board. They have the ability to delegate it to another body in town as well. So if they chose to delegate it to the planning board, then you don't necessarily have to address that in zoning. So now, the other thing we highly recommend, and this is part of what we're doing here, what we've been doing starting with Gene and now working with Aiden, is reviewing the Bible bylaws and regulations. The state has produced, in addition to all of these new regulations that they released on March 1st, the state has also developed 3 new model bylaws for consideration. The first one is a model consolidated permit regulations. This is essentially the process requirements for submitting a consolidated permit. You have the ability to add this as a regulation of the planning board, or you can add it to your zoning requirements. And essentially what it does is it references all of the requirements of the state consolidated permitting regulations. That's that 255 CMR chapter 29. And it allows it all to exist in a single place. Now, if a person does apply for a consolidated permit and this section is not in your bylaw, they still are required to go through the same list of requirements that are in those regulations. This is just an easy way to make sure that everyone who goes to your zoning code is going to know that these are the requirements they have to follow. The other thing we are looking at is the model solar bylaw. There was a version that was released in October of last year. They just released an updated version a couple of weeks ago. And what this does is this provides updated language that is now consistent with the different designations that the state has, how they've defined it. And it has language that is compliant with the recent rulings on Chapter 48, Section 3, that Dover section. And it also has some more robust language than some of our towns have in terms of requirements. It helps clarify what you are allowed to do in terms of screenings and setbacks and all of that thing. So it's a very good document for doing it. The third one is the model battery storage bylaw. As I had said earlier, battery storage was determined in recent court cases to be protected on the same level that solar facilities are. This includes battery storage that is standalone and is not necessarily tied directly to an existing solar facility. So because it has that protection, we're strongly recommending that communities consider adopting regulations around the battery storage, and the state has provided a model bylaw that can help with that. And those are the main things that we have used in our initial review, working with Gene and with Aiden over the past few months. Again, I just want to stress that amending the zoning code is optional. We strongly encourage all of our communities to do so, though, because again, with this new appeals process and with the new scrutiny that's coming to it, anything that is not that may be not compliant with Dover is going to be more vulnerable to challenge in the future, we believe. This is sort of a generalized list, but this is what we have been providing to the town of Sturbridge over the past few months. We have reviewed the solar bylaws for consistency with the consolidated permitting processes. We've been working with Gene and then with Aiden on technical assistance with this permitting process, what the workflow has to be, as well as helping to draft the changes that are in front of you tonight. This is funded through a grant from the DOER Regional Energy Planning Assistance Program, the REPA program, which is great because it means that there's no additional cost to any of our communities. So in addition to doing this, the other thing that we've been doing is we've been doing outreach meetings. We've done 3 of them so far. One in May, or we did 2, one in May, one in June, and we did one just a few days ago. That was sort of a lunch and learn session. And we have more to come. We don't have any dates yet for that, but we will be doing those in the future. This is just a little bit about the timeline and availability. We have funding until the end of May 2027, so we have time to be able to help our communities navigate this process up until and including summer town meetings. So we're very happy that we've been able to get the funding for that. So that is the extent of my presentation. I know that some of it is sort of generalized for your purposes. We've been having these discussions with the town since, I believe, February of last year. We initially got a district local technical assistance grant to start this process, and then when the additional funding from DOER came out, we were able to secure that to continue along and get us to the point where we are now, where you have some language to consider. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this point.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Ron before we have? Oh, they're all set. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. And I think Ron, if he's available, he might stick around to answer any questions you might have as we get into the proposed amendments themselves. So I think my goal is to go over these amendments kind of consideration by consideration. So you'll want to have your staff memo and these track changes kind of side by side. Again, really this evening I'm looking for 2 main votes. One is to provide guidance on each of these key considerations, and then the other is, regardless of the guidance provided, to vote to be petitioner to the select board so we can continue this process forward to an eventual town meeting. So if we are looking at the amendments, the first page, nothing has changed since August 10th. This is simply updating definitions based on the recent changes, along with page 2.
So Yeah, Dane, we're working on this one here, I think.
Yeah, I was going through the revised memo.
Page 2 is, once again, just updated definitions. At this point in time, based on staff comment, I've also included definition of site footprint, which is just taken from 225 CMR 29. This may change. Currently, we haven't actually referenced it anywhere else in the amendments, but it may come in useful based on staff comment. If not, removing it may also provide clarity, but this is simply a definition that we don't really need input on yet. The next major thing is the following pages are taken from Article 5, the Groundwater Protection District. There are no changes to this section except to what should be subsection C7, in which we just allow primary use solar facilities and related systems to be allowed in this zone, because we are also recommending special permit standards for the groundwater protection district. So if you then flip forward to Article 10, this is where we kind of pick up where we left off on August 10th, and we'll get into our first and main consideration. And you also see this consideration detailed on the memo, which was revised today. So on August 10th, the conclusion that I provided based on staff discussion and what the board also felt that they agreed with was that the rural residential district is the largest zoning district in town, and as written in Article 10 of our solar bylaws, currently solar facilities are not an allowed use in that zone, and we intended to keep it that way on August 10th. Since then, I prepared my memo to recommend that it should be an allowed zone, which I've since rescinded based on further staff discussion and guidance from town council, and I agree with all of that. So the main consideration here is we have 10 zoning districts, and based on the existing case law, we do need to provide a reasonable amount of land area for development of solar and associated solar systems. And the recommendation I've provided here is that to do so, the commercial district and commercial 2 district should be permitted via special permit. So essentially, we would be shifting those 2 zones from being prohibited as they are now, being allowed by special permit.
And those 2 zones being?
Commercial and commercial 2. And if you read the track changes, essentially everything else would remain as it is. And the only other thing I will note is because these solar energy facility article was updated quite a while ago, we also do need to add in the new Village Gateway District as the 10th district, and my recommendation would be that solar facilities would be prohibited in that zone. Is a minuscule amount of land area as well.
Yeah, it was really for, that area on New Boston Road where the hotel is and the Panera and all that. That was created as sort of a Village Gateway District to try to have some of the appearances, more reasonable for a nice entrance to the town. That was really what that was about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so any thoughts or discussions on that? I mean, I think the best thing might be, do you think, to take a vote on each one of these as we move forward?
I think so. I think, for clarity, maybe a vote on each one as we go, and some of these do build on each other, so I'll identify maybe where we should hold off.
Right.
And if we ever do, you know, you read something and it kind of makes you feel a bit conflicted, we can go back and touch on any of these as we see fit.
Yeah, so basically what we're doing really is saying that, okay, we will now allow these by special permit in the commercial district and commercial two. No other changes.
Right.
Sound reasonable to everybody?
What was the part about rural residential?
Well, the rural residential came up as a possibility of adding it to that. I mean, there are other communities that have had some issues with coverage and whether or not they needed to have it in the rural residential district. As Aid mentioned, at a meeting we had earlier on, it was decision to go and, you know, not put it in rural residential. And then there had been some other discussion over the past week or so that maybe we should be adding it in there. But I think, you know, looking back and having discussed this again with town council, there is no real requirement to have it in rural residential. We already have significant areas that, you know, do have it in there. I mean, one of the communities that I think, you know, came up as a point of discussion only had 2% of their entire land area, you know, designated for solar. Ours is somewhere between 10 or 15%, depending on, you know, what we look at, and we will be getting a better number on that. So, you know, we do have a reasonable amount of areas that are allowed to have the solar facilities.
And you had mentioned, I'm sorry, Aiden, that there was some sort of state level thresholds about those minimum areas. Is that somewhere above that if we're in the 10 to 15%
So-
range?
That is where the meat of the discussion lies, in that there is no clear threshold at this point. The closest we have to a threshold is the recent Kearsarge case in Walpole and the Tracer Lane 2 decision, in which, if you look at both of those combined, the only threshold we have is anything 2% or less of total land cover is not enough area. Guidance has not been provided on what would be an acceptable amount, whether that's 3, 5, 10%.
But as we've outlined it today that we're talking about, we're somewhere in the 10 to 15 range.
Yes.
Okay.
My recommendation would be, during the public hearing process, staff would provide a clear figure, an estimate. But at this point in time, from prior discussion on this, we do believe it's somewhere around 10 to 15%, and it's certainly above 2%.
And the numbers we're talking about are gross land area within those zones, not undeveloped area within
Correct.
those zones. Okay.
It's gross
That's what
land
we do,
area
exactly.
based off of just zoning cover.
And there's no cap either. Like, if you say that because there's no threshold defined, there's no cap and say, well, this is sufficient, that's enough, you could have 50%, we'll say.
Correct.
I mean, obviously, it would be not realistic, but since there's no cap and they haven't defined one either, makes this kind of a rush job, I think. On looking at the best part of this, this seems to be, I think, where a lot of the contention really lies, is with the best component of it, because a lot of this is newer tech. It really isn't as well tested. There's not a lot of experience with it. There has been incidents where things went wrong. And I think that's where we asked for an extension on this a couple months ago. And apparently it's been denied.
Yeah.
As reading into it, they've decided that safety concern, they've decided that it's safe. And without us having to vet it on ourselves and think about what the definition of safe is.
Well, I think part of it too is, I think in the opinion we got from the AG's office, it's also the fact that just saying that we're looking in general for, safety issues and so forth, aren't really specific enough. I believe they were trying to look for something that might be, say, site-specific or pretty unique to have much more detail on that would be invested.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah, and a lot of it comes out of the, what this newer technology is all about and what kind of scale might be applied in a facility, and where that, where there's a potential danger of something going wrong. Outside of that, it's just mostly zoning, right? So,
I would say so. It's zoning and local regulations, and it's finding the fine balance very delicate balance
Yeah.
for Sturbridge of what we want to allow for development, and what we want to maintain as it is existing. And the BES is identified in considerations 3 and 4, and those will go kind of hand in hand. I'll explain those. So currently, as Charlie summarized, consideration 1, there's been a lot of back and forth. Some of these revisions were heavily influenced by that recent moratorium denial we received, but now my recommendation is kind of doubling down on the August 10th guidance given and saying rural residential is going to remain unchanged, and the only change proposed is that the commercial and commercial 2 districts should now be allowable by special permit.
Okay, so do we have a motion then recommending that change?
I will second it.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Oh, Taylor too.
I'm sorry, what?
Taylor.
You're right. Oh, that's right, we have to do this by voice vote now that I think about it. Taylor, were you all set on that? Have you heard this whole thing?
Yes, sir.
All right. No comments or discussion then?
Nothing for me.
All right, so we'll do this by roll call vote. Dane?
Yes.
Yes. Wally? I vote yes.
Yes.
Yes. And Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, very good, so pass unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Find that out. All right, moving on.
So consideration number 2 came out of staff discussion, and we identified we would be working on this at the last meeting. And here, my recommendation is that the planning board implement additional restrictions and regulations on any application for a solar or BESS facility that is proposed to be within the groundwater protection district. And that district is identified and referenced in our town code, which relates to a November 2008 map, which has also been provided. And that map identifies all the individual wells in town, along with the buffers around those wells, which is known as Zone 1, and then Zone 2 is the dark pink hatched area, and Zone 3 is the lighter pink hatched area, which is hard to see on paper. It's a bit easier to see on computer, but it's essentially the western half of Sturbridge. So this consideration is for, and this still needs to be fleshed out entirely ahead of the public hearing process, but seeing the track changes, we do identify that any facility located within Zone 1 shall be prohibited, whereas Zone 2 or Zone 3, any site, regardless of its zoning, if it's contained within those zones of the groundwater protection district, it should be allowed only by grant of special permit. And then within the memo itself, we've also identified various other, I would call them avoidance, mitigation, and minimization strategies for safety on site. These have not been incorporated yet into the track changes, as discussion will be ongoing with multiple staff members, including DPW and Conservation, as to where they should be located within the text. But ultimately, we would still seek your recommendation on whether regulations should be implemented, and these would be some of the main regulations that would be implemented.
Okay. So we have secondary chemical containment, fire suppression, water containment, and no chemical defoliants. And others you may have, is what you're saying?
Yes, as we incorporate these into the text themselves, and we kind of cross-reference with the existing DOER standards, so that we're very clear on what we're requiring as a local regulation. We will actually need to place these within the text themselves.
I mean, clearly, we need things that are going to be able to be, hopefully able to, contain any of these risks to the groundwater. So, do we have any other discussion on that or questions?
Yeah, I have questions.
Sure.
The vote that we just took, sorry to be just trying to understand all the stuff we're doing here. The vote that we just took, we said we're adding commercial and commercial 2 as a special permit, but rural residential, we're not adding.
Right.
Is that what we talked about?
That's right.
All right. I'm reading 310.11.4
Right.
at the top of one of these pages. And it says, primary use shall be allowed only by special permit in rural residential CD and CD2.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
glad
think
you
we
pointed
wanna
that. I
stroke
did see-
rural
yeah,
residential
yeah,
from that.
check
I don't know
out
if-
because I saw that earlier today, and I forgot to bring it up. I'm glad you brought that up, Dane. That shouldn't be there.
So is this, okay, so this document isn't changing based on the decisions we're making, and that's just like historical vestige? Is this
No,
have to be re-reviewed post everything we've done, or is that just a Scrivener's error?
Well, in other words, I think when this first came out,
It was based on that previous conversation, understood.
well, it actually had in there that the rural residential would be considered part of it.
Yeah.
And so then we decided not to do that. So
should
this
that
has
just
to
be
become out.
struck in to
Exactly.
agree with
Yeah,
what we
that'll have to be
voted on?
cleaned up
Okay.
because, rural residential, will not have it, as a permitted use. And so
Okay,
that has
I don't mean to get
be
hung up
struck. So we'll
on
have to go
detail
through
here,
the whole
but
thing.
yeah.
And the intent is based off of all the guidance provided tonight, we would have to redraft a final copy of these.
Makes perfect sense.
Which I would probably submit to the planning chair to make sure it's consistent with.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces here. Awesome. I was just making sure I wasn't confused about that. Now, the thing about groundwater, it's a two-part thing. There's solar panel productions, and then there's also the energy, the battery element. The batteries in the groundwater district, I understand the conflict. Could we discuss briefly, maybe CMRP could help, why we don't want solar voltaic panels in groundwater districts? Is there a reason for that?
I have a limited technical understanding of this, based off of discussion. And my understanding is that, we do want to be wary of separating, these uses, because solar and BESS should be considered within the same category, when it comes to, them being protected uses. But whether they should be separated out and solar should not be, under the same scrutiny as BESS in the groundwater protection district, I'm not sure that's something we've considered.
Well, I do think that when these, first came out as far as the ground-mounted solar, there still was concern about fires and incidents that, could occur on there, and the fact that you'd have to introduce, water to, kill the fire and all that kind of stuff. And so the situation we have here is that obviously we want to have a much higher level of protection in our groundwater, protection district. And so, that's why we have, the special permit. That's why we would make sure that any of these requirements that, are here that would do everything they can to prevent, contamination of groundwater are in there. So it's not that the idea really is we need to have that extra protection because even this, this is really a two-part process when we do anything in the groundwater protection area. We still have to get, approval of the Board of Selectmen as water commissioners to make sure that everything that is being done on this thing to make sure that it will be safe to put that use in that district is acceptable to them. So, it's really a two-stage thing.
Photovoltaic panels, they also have BESS systems attached to them as well, for obviously, the storage. So you're dealing with it, maybe not as large or independently as a BESS system without a photovoltaic system. I think that you'd almost need to have the same groundwater protection, which is the reason Charlie just said.
Yeah.
And that they shouldn't be separated out. They should be just.
Well, I see solar voltaic panels in themselves as fairly inert material.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And they have a
I agree with
good
that.
track record, and they're fairly safe.
But
And
having function, actually, a lot of the systems that go up have to have the battery storage with them, too. Because they're not just feeding.
not
out the
all,
grid.
but there's a lot of current systems that are already employed out in the field that don't have these kind of BESS systems. This is meant to kind of collect it and hold it and release it during times when there isn't.
Right. But for the ones that do, you do need that. And I think you if you get down to the nitty gritty of separating them out, then you're adding more.
Yeah, back when we actually reviewed and actually passed, our current solar bylaw, I know there had been a lot of discussion, maybe right, maybe wrong, about whether or not there was more danger in these things, if they fractured, if they broke, if there were other, materials in there. I mean, they're not just made.
They're fairly inert to my knowledge.
Right,
and-
but I know there's a lot of, I think the idea that, you'd want to, be able to make sure we apply any additional, that we would need to both the ground-mounted solar and obviously to the best, because the
Yeah, a
best
lot of,
system
I
is
think,
a
the
lot more.
considerations traditionally is, widespread removal of vegetation. And, that may affect the watershed and the watershed rate, and also aesthetic issues. People may or may not like seeing a, 10,000 element solar farm in their view.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of the traditional kickback has
There's a lot
been,
of
and I think it still exists, of course. But yeah, to the point that, could they be separated? I would be a lot more comfortable with it in a more sensitive district if it doesn't have the best element, but also understanding that the best element can be applied without solar panels as well. And
That's why I was thinking, for BESS, I understand the logic. For solar, I just wanted to have this conversation, which I appreciate. Thank you for
Good.
taking a few minutes to have.
Yeah, no problem at all. All right, so any other questions? Otherwise, we would have a motion then to allow additional regulations to be implemented for the groundwater protection district relating.
I have one other question or point. It refers to the 2008 map. Is this going to be a dynamic document that if it gets updated, it'll follow that, or will it be attached to the 2008 watershed record?
Just put language as amended or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be something to consider, and I know the DPW DPW director brought that up as well, so I've added that in as a note here at the bottom, in which I say, essentially, the town GIS does map the district as a single layer, but it doesn't differentiate between the zones as the static map from 2008 does. And the closest we have to an interactive map, which is not static, and you can also see zone 1, 2, and 3. We do not have that. That's only on Mass DEP. So we may, request services from Ty and Bonds that we update our GIS to include a layer that actually differentiates between zone 1, 2, and 3. Or we may just leave the language as written that it references this static map from 2008,
Yeah,
and that's
which,
how it's written now.
From my perspective, that's rather a mature map at this point. And even if I may be mistaken, but if there's a conservation survey done, it has a fairly short shelf life before it has to be reassessed. 3 years, 5 years, something like that. So if you have it marked out, 3 years, 4 years go by, does it not need to be resurveyed in order to be compliant again to, for say building or changes? But this map goes back almost 2
Yeah, I'm not
decades.
sure if, the groundwater area that needs to be protected would change that frequently, but. it's a
But
good
here
point.
again, it
It's a
should
good
be,
point. You're right.
It's got to follow the rule of law like everything
Exactly.
else in this.
Good point.
So I think having a static is, or whatever map that is current
Yep,
in the language,
good. Good point.
and shall follow that.
Okay.
So we've had a motion, the second discussion. Ready for the vote?
Yep.
Dane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I vote yes.
Yes.
You vote yes. Taylor?
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Should speed up a bit here. Considerations 3 and 4 really go hand in hand here. Consideration 3 is, shall battery energy storage systems BESS be an allowable use? And this is because currently there's nowhere in our bylaws that say that BESS is an allowable use, but as Ron described, we don't have to make this change. We can refer to just state guidance. State would overrule us on this in almost all scenarios anyways. So the way I see this is by implementing it into our bylaws anyways, we're really just making a bit of measured progress. And then building upon that, consideration 4 is shall best be allowed as a primary use facility, which would mean in the same way you can have solar that's standalone with no BESS on site. It's just feeding directly into the grid. You could have a BESS system as standalone that is not generating any electricity on site. It's solely a primary use. It's buying and selling energy from the grid and taking advantage of generation and directing that back to the grid at peak versus off-peak hours. So these would be ultimately the most controversial point, I would assume, at any town meeting. But from staff's point of view, there are also decisions that we believe there's not much of an argument to be made, and essentially BESS should be an allowable use, and we recommend that it should also be allowed as a primary use.
Right. And actually, we're taking this whole procedure here to really do what we can to actually be able to at least control or influence the areas where we think they're most suitable, really. So why don't we take the first one then, this consideration number 3, shall battery energy storage systems be an allowable use? We'll make a motion to say yes on that?
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Dane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
I vote yes.
My only statement on this is simply that, the word BESS is just this blanket thing, doesn't say what the components of the system are made. Somebody could come up with something that's better in the future, or somebody could just install something that is quite hazardous and experimental. Is there any guidelines someplace before this? And I imagine a lot of this is going to fall under the Massachusetts Electrical Code and the International Electrical Code as well.
Well, I mean, we
As
have
a
added
structure.
We have added a description of it. I mean, so Ron, do you have anything on that? In other words, the best systems that the state is promoting, I mean, they have a certain makeup, right? I mean,
Different chemicals used.
do you have any thoughts on that, Ron? Or
So the most common ones that we have seen have been the lithium-ion battery storage, essentially the Tesla-style battery packs that have been being deployed. I have not seen any guidance that specifies what type of battery could be used. Part of that is because there are various, there are mechanical battery storage systems. Most of the time it's going to be this chemical battery storage system, but there are other types. We've seen water pump. I've heard of sand battery storage systems that essentially use a small amount of energy to pump water uphill, and then it lets it go down and releases energy hydroelectrically. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's so broad. There are some requirements that the state has included in the regulations that were released about the types of fire suppression systems that are required for specific types of chemical batteries. The trying to limit or prohibit the use of PFAS chemicals, things of that nature. So there are some considerations that are specific to those types of batteries, but I haven't seen any guidance that suggests there's a way for us at the local level to be able to regulate or to dictate which types of batteries are allowed and which are not.
Thank you.
All right. So did you vote yet? Or?
I will vote yes.
Okay. Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, great. Very good. And so right after that now, we'll take the one shall BESS to be allowed as as primary use facilities. Any other comments or questions on that? Doc, we have a motion to allow, to say yes, they can be allowed as primary use facilities.
I'll make a motion with that.
I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion? Okay. Dane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Wally, you vote yes. I vote yes.
Yes.
Dave? Taylor?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Now, the next one, you can go in consideration number 5.
So similarly, consideration 5 and 6 go kind of hand in hand. It should be noted that these considerations are both dealing with existing local regulations. So these aren't, new language being added, but more so, it was considered with everything that's going on, whether these existing regulations may be overly regulatory or too restrictive for developers when it comes to the site selection process. I will say for consideration 5, my initial recommendation had been to remove this regulation, which deals with only 20% of a parcel's total square footage may be used for a solar facility. I have since discussed with town staff and town council, and I was brought up to speed on the extensive history of how this regulation came into place, and I believe that now it should be, I would recommend that it should be maintained. I think it's more consistent with the type of solar and BESS development the town would be looking to accommodate. So this consideration 5 is whether that 20% of a parcel its total square footage should just be maintained as a local regulation or not. And then consideration 6 is whether the language structures shall be buffered and or shielded from view and or joined, clustered to avoid adverse visual impacts as deemed necessary by the planning board, and etc. And the key word there was as deemed necessary by the planning board, which is not clear, but given that this language is used to accomplish appropriate mitigation and screening and buffering strategies, which are also detailed in the model bylaws provided, I would recommend just maintaining this as well.
Right, and on this number 5 here, where we talked about the 20% coverage, I mean, this was a topic that was discussed pretty extensively back in 2013 or 14 when the solar bylaw was adopted. And, I understand that the basis for this was the fact that we allow 15% lot coverage in residential areas, 30% in commercial, and this was felt like a good compromise to have the 20%. So that's how the 20% came out. And I also want to point out the fact that the AG had no problem with this in the previous bylaw that we had for just the solar, ground-mounted solar, which was the only thing we had at the time to consider. But I would recommend, we just, move ahead and, as Aidan recommends, keep it at the 20% and leave the wording in there for buffering, because buffering has always been an important thing when the community talks about it. So if there are no other questions on that, we'll have a motion then to retain the 20% coverage that's currently in our bylaw. So we just won't be changing anything. It's just still going to be in there.
Just remain as is.
Is there a second?
So
Moved
moved.
it. In the second, Dane, or?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Just to clarify, that 20% is regardless of the zone that it's in. If it's a 100-acre parcel, they can develop 20 acres of it, say?
Yeah, if it's, well, I guess that's the way it really works. If it is that, yes, yeah. If it's a parcel type thing. It's still 20% of the total lot. I mean,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And the state's guidance is that no zoning bylaw shall prohibit or unnecessarily regulate the installation of systems that facilitate the collection of solar energy. I don't know about this one, but that's just me.
Okay.
You can carry on with your vote if you'd like to. I feel like you've answered my question. Thank you.
all right. So you ready for a vote then, or you want to?
Yeah, no, I believe so. Yep.
Okay. Dane, how do you vote? Or?
Wally made the motion and he seconded. I vote no.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Wally votes yes. I vote yes.
Oh, yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. All right. And the next one then will just be to retain the language structure shall be buffered and shielded from the view as currently in the bylaw. Motion on that?
I'll motion that.
Okay, second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Dane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Wally votes yes, I vote yes. Dave?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Great. Okay, now we are at number 7. Hayden?
This last recommendation was also touched on by Ron earlier this evening, and this essentially, if you look at our track change amendments, is the addition of 300-10.13 Consolidated Local Permit Guidelines. And the guidance given here is that this can be incorporated into either just local planning board regulations or our bylaw. But interestingly enough, the moratorium denial, and we discussed this with town council, he had noticed this as well, and one of the footnotes makes a recommendation that this be incorporated into the bylaw, and I agree with that recommendation, and it makes a strong point in which the applicant can decide to apply for the consolidated local permit for any solar or BESS facility, or they can choose to apply just under local regulations. So if we incorporate the consolidated local permit into our bylaw, that allows us to enforce its standards, which are quite robust, regardless of whether the applicant chooses to file consolidated local permit or just under local regulations. So the best case example of that would be if an applicant chose to forego the local consolidated permit and submit it under local regulations. If this section was in our bylaw, we could still enforce that site suitability standards were done, and they would have to provide that report, and then that would enable us to bring in an outside consultant for review of that, of site suitability standards.
Yeah, so I think, originally when we talked about this, we thought maybe regulation would be easier, or better for us, but it turns out, as Aidan pointed out, that it's much better, I believe, to have it as a bylaw. Now, I did discuss this again a little bit today with town council. Was he able to get any comments to you or anything on that? Because he did.
Not received.
All right. So there may be some adjustments to this. I know when he read through it on the first, time that was in here, he mentioned that there's an area there where we seem to be actually repeating one of the regulations that's in the state CMR thing, and he doesn't think that's a good idea. So we wanted to clean that up. And there was one other area where there was some wording that he thought we should clean up a little bit to make it more favorable to us than it would have been to a developer. So as we approve this, hopefully we will, they may get some tweaks from town council once he reviews it before we, and of course, we also have the public hearing process to discuss and make changes in a larger scale on anything if we wanted to, I suppose.
To that point, it sounded like there was an issue of urgency. What is the timing and the opportunity for revisions between the deadlines?
Well, anything that he has like to add for this, we have to give a pretty complete document, to the board to actually review and then refer back to us for the public hearing process. So we want to get it as accurate as we can with as much information as we possibly can. But then, of course, the whole public hearing process is the opportunity for us to take comments and make other changes and so forth. So I'm pretty sure that we do have, as Aidan pointed out, rather a tight schedule, but I think we'll be able to do that. And I just wanted to make it understood that already I know there's going to be a few changes in that town council will be recommending. Okay. So with that, if there's no other comments or questions, could we have a motion then to incorporate the consolidated local permit guidelines into the bylaws?
So moved.
Second. Any other discussion? Dane?
Yes.
Yes.
Wally votes yes. I vote yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Taylor?
Yes.
Great. I keep looking over there and the sound comes from over there.
Final comment in this document is that it didn't need to be consideration, but we recommended that the LGR, the local government representative in Sturbridge, be the town planner. it just makes the most sense for this community.
Yeah, and I believe the town administrator is on board with that. I think
Yes.
that's her recommendation as well. And she is the chief administrative officer of the town, so it would be her call. All right, good, we'll do that then. Anything else you have on these conclusion things? We have to now take a vote to refer this to the Board of Selectmen.
Yes, if the planning board doesn't have any other questions for myself or Ron, then we'd look to entertain a vote to planning board serve as petitioner to the select board.
We're good, have a motion. Okay,
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Dane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wally vote? Yes, I vote yes.
Yes.
Dave, yes. Taylor?
Yes.
All right, very good, thank you. What's that? Three. Okay, let's see. Next, we have town planner update. Ron, thank you very much. We appreciate your help on this.
Not a problem. I'm happy to help you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Okay, for the town planner updates, for Tractor Supply, the update since then was, since the notice of 2 violations was sent, all displayed merchandise, other than the allowed trailer and equipment display, which is articulated in their 2010 approval, all of that has been remediated, and the only outstanding violation is a few broken pieces of asphalt, and the, I believe, store manager or district manager has indicated that a work order has been submitted for repair of those broken sections of the site. So that's it
All
for
right.
Tractor Supply. And then in terms of board and committee vacancies, we've had great progress. The Historical Commission has reached full membership with the appointment of Maxine Carter-Loam, and the Design Review Committee only has 1 vacancy remaining following the appointment of Alex Perrin. So we're making great progress there.
Great, very good.
The last thing on the report is just upcoming meeting dates on the 14th and 28th. Currently, we have nothing set in stone for the 14th that I'm aware of. But the 28th will be the start date for the public hearing on the solar amendments.
All right, very good. And we also had, obviously, in the previous part of this memo, the checklist for the zoning amendment schedule. And it looks like, at least as long as all these other dates can be met, submitting the petition to the Board of Selectmen on the 8th, newspaper ad on September 3rd, publication dates and so forth, that the date of the public hearing most likely would be September 28th. So, and then I believe that the town meeting is, I don't know if there's an actual date in November scheduled. Is there a date for it?
A date hasn't been scheduled yet.
Well, it'll be in November.
This is for a special town meeting.
Special town meeting to review these. Yep, good. All right, very good. Next, we have old or new business. Dane, any old or new business?
No, sir.
None.
No. Dave?
Not at this time.
Taylor?
For me, thanks for letting me join via web.
He said, thanks for letting me join via web.
Oh, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it, Taylor. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
You vote yes?
Yes.
Yes.
I vote yes.
Yes.
And Taylor?